Good morning. Charmides from Plato, day 4. Adieu. And do they make or do their own business? And do they make or do their own business only, or that of others also? Also of others. So Socrates is refuting the proposition that temperance is minding your own business. And are they temperate, seeing that they do not make or do their own business only? Why not? He said. No objection on my part, I said, but there may be a difficulty on his who proposes as a definition of temperance, doing one's own business, and then says that there is no reason why those who do the business of others should not be temperate. Nay, said he, did I ever acknowledge that those who do the business of others are temperate? I say those who make, not those who do. What? I asked. Do you mean to say that doing and making are not the same? No more, he replied, than making and working are the same. Thus much I have learned from Hesiod, who said that work is no disgrace. Now do you imagine that if he had meant by working and doing such things as you were describing, he would have said that there was no disgrace in them, for example, in the manufacture of shoes? Oh, no, I forgot. No, I'll just look at that. Or in selling dried fish, or sitting for hire in a house of ill fame. That Socrates is not to be supposed, but I conceive him to have distinguished making from doing and work. And while admitting that making anything might sometimes become a disgrace, when the employment was not honorable, to have thought that work was never any disgrace at all, for things nobly and usually made he called works, and such makings he called workings and doings. And he must be supposed to have deemed only such things to be man's proper business, and all that is hurtful not to be his business. And in that sense Hesiod, and any other wise man, may be reasonably supposed to call him wise, who does his own work. O Critias, I said, no sooner had you opened your mouth than I pretty well knew that you would call that which is proper to a man, and that which is his own, good, and that the making of the good you would call doings. For I am no stranger to the endless distinctions which Prodicus draws about names. Now I have no objection to your giving names any signification which you please, if you will only tell me to what you apply them. Please then to begin again, and be a little plainer. Do you mean that this doing or making, or whatever is the word which you would use, of good things, is temperance? I do, he said. So the doing or making of good things is temperance. Then not he who does evil, but he who does good is temperate. Yes, he said, and you, my friend, would agree. No matter whether I should or not, just now, not what I think, but what you are saying is the point at issue. An important principle in dialectic and dialogos, it's not about your own thought, it's what about the other one is saying, and to get the most of his own meaning out of him. Well, he answered, I mean to say that he who does evil and not good is not temperate, and that he is temperate who does good and not evil. For temperance I define in plain words to be the doing of good actions. everything in moderation, the good doing of good actions. And you may be very likely right in what you are saying, but I am surprised that you think temperate men to be ignorant of their own temperance. I do not think so, he said. And yet, were you not saying just now that craftsmen might be temperate in doing another's work, as well as in doing their own? I was, he replied. But what is your drift? I have no particular drift, but I wish that you would tell me whether a physician who cures a patient may do good to himself and good to his patient also. I think that he may. And he who does so does his duty. Yes, and a job well done is a reward to oneself. And does not he who does his duty act temperately or wisely? Yes, he acts wisely. Is Socrates here equating temperance with wisdom? Or Plato? But must the physician necessarily know when his treatment is likely to prove beneficial and when not? And must every worker necessarily know when he is likely to be benefited and when not to be benefited by the work which he is doing? I suppose not. Then, I said, the physician may sometimes do good or harm without knowing which he has done, and yet in doing good, as you say, he has done temperately or wisely. Was not that your statement? Yes. Then, as would seem, in doing good he may act wisely or temperately, and be wise or temperate, but not know his own wisdom or temperance. I'm not sure if this relates, but I'm thinking of a friend of mine who is a great artist, shared this morning that to make art which you yourself are called to make, and not to make art which is profitable, is the ideal. And I'm wondering if this relates to this in some way. But that, Socrates, he said, is impossible. Okay. And therefore, if this is, as you imply, the necessary consequence of any of my previous admissions, I will withdraw them and will not be ashamed to acknowledge that I made a mistake, rather than admit that a man can be temperate or wise who does not know himself. For I would almost say that self-knowledge is the very essence of temperance. And in this I agree with him who dedicated the inscription, "Know thyself," at Delphi. That inscription, if I am not mistaken, is put there as a sort of salutation which the god addresses to those who enter the temple, as much as to say that the ordinary salutation of hail is not right, and that the exhortation, "Be temperate," is far better. If I rightly understand the meaning of the inscription, the god speaks to those who enter his temple, not as men speak, but whenever a worshipper enters, the first word which he hears is, "Be temperate." This, however, like a prophet, he expresses in a sort of riddle, for know thyself and be temperate are the same, as I maintain, and as the words imply, and yet they may be thought to be different. And succeeding sages who added, "Never too much," or "Give a pledge, and evil is nigh at hand," would appear to have so distinguished them, for they imagined that "know thyself" was a piece of advice which the god gave, and not his salutation of the worshippers at their first coming in. And they dedicated their own inscriptions under the idea that they too would give equally useful pieces of advice. Shall I tell you, Socrates, why I say all this? My object is to leave the previous discussion, in which I know not whether you or I are more right, but at any rate no clear result was attained, and to raise a new one, in which I will attempt to prove, if you deny it, that temperance is self-knowledge. This is an interesting turn. I did not know this. I've read this before, but still I didn't know it. That it seems, if I hear myself correctly, that know thyself was the only inscription at Delphi for a while, and that everything in moderation and everything else, if what might have been there, was added later. Very interesting, this be temperate, to know thyself, the equation of that. It makes sense to me, everything in moderation, that is the equator to be temperate, but to know yourself equated to temperance. If temperance and wisdom is equated, then yes, that's easier to make those connections. Be wise, know yourself. That's not a difficult jump to make. Let's see what Socrates says. Yes, I said, Socrates said, Critias, but you come to me as though I profess to know about the questions which I ask, and as though I could, if I only would, agree with you, whereas the fact is that I am inquiring with you into the truth of that which is advanced from time to time, just because I do not know, and when I have inquired, I will say whether I agree with you or not. Please then to allow me time to reflect. This is a really important passage, I think. Maybe I'll read that. There. You come to me as though I profess to know about the questions which I ask, and as though I could, if I only would, agree with you, whereas the fact is that I am inquiring with you into the truth of that which is advanced from time to time, just because I do not know, and when I have inquired, I will say whether I agree with you or not. Please then to allow me time to reflect. I hate making marks. And reflect, he said. I am reflecting, I replied, and discover that temperance or wisdom, if it is a species of knowledge, must be a science, and a science of something. Science, of course, is not meant in our understanding of science. Yes, he said, the science of man's self. I think I should stop there, because it seems like it's going to go in an awesome direction. Awesome new direction. Tot hier toe ons skriflesing. Have a beautiful day.